called to testify. Why a former White House lawyer might be appearing before lawmakers in the impeachment investigation into President Donald Trump. On his way home, Pope Francis ends his two-nation trip to Asia. We give you the highlights of his time in Thailand and Japan. Fighting for the faithful. Religious freedom advocates gather in Hungary for a conference focused on protecting Christians from persecution. And giving thanks. Why one Catholic church in Detroit is already celebrating a Thanksgiving blessing. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, November 26, 2019. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you for joining us for News from a Catholic Perspective. I'm Wyatt Goolsby. President Donald Trump faces a setback in the impeachment probe. A federal judge said former White House counsel Donald McGahn must appear before Congress. A presidential advisor says the ruling is not surprising, especially since it came from an Obama-appointed judge. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Wyatt. The White House is appealing the judge's decision. It doesn't believe that President Trump's top officials should be forced to testify before Congress.
Former White House counsel Donald McGahn is being ordered to appear before Congress. The ruling from a federal judge stated not even the president's closest aides who receive congressional subpoenas can, quote, ignore or defy congressional compulsory process by order of the president or otherwise.
The DOJ has made clear that they will appeal yesterday's decision. It is not a final decision. It is not necessarily a surprising decision. I was with the president when he was briefed on the decision coming down, actually, and nobody was surprised. It is not unexpected, but it may be unsustainable, and we'll see where it goes.
McGahn was a star witness in special counsel Robert Mueller's Russia investigation. Democrats wanted to question him about possible obstruction of justice by the president. That was months before the House started an impeachment inquiry into President Trump's effort to get Ukraine to announce an investigation of former Vice President Joe Biden. Today, the president indicated he wouldn't have a problem with McGahn or former National Security Advisor John Bolton testifying, and he goes further on Twitter saying, I would love to have Mike Pompeo, Rick Perry, Mick Mulvaney, and many others testify about the phony impeachment hoax. But Democrats say the White House has been stonewalling the investigation, which could amount to the president obstructing Congress. Today, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo defended the administration's response to the impeachment inquiry.
We've continued to comply with all the legal requirements. You saw we released documents, I guess it was last week now. We'll continue to do that as required by law and as appropriate so that appropriate oversight can be conducted.
An attorney for former National Security Advisor John Bolton also dismisses the judge's ruling. He says it will have no impact on whether or not Bolton testifies before Congress. The White House is waiting to see how this whole appeals process plays out. Wyatt.
White House correspondent Mark Irons reporting. Thanks, Mark. Well, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says he, quote, can't see the Senate removing the president in the middle of an election. Meanwhile, Democratic candidates are campaigning to beat the incumbent. In New Hampshire yesterday, presidential candidate Bernie Sanders called on religious leaders to take a moral stand.
We need religious leaders to stand up and tell the world that what their religion is about is justice.
But the Democratic presidential candidates each support what they term abortion rights. Bernie Sanders' website declares abortion is health care. Elizabeth Warren calls pro-life Americans extreme. Pete Buttigieg promises to fight for abortion rights. Kamala Harris supports a reproductive rights act to fight abortion restrictions. Newly announced candidate and former Republican Michael Bloomberg says a woman's right to choose is a fundamental American right. And Joe Biden, a Catholic, has flip-flopped on abortion. For decades, he supported the Hyde Amendment, which bans taxpayer dollars from being used for abortions. But this summer, Biden reversed course and is now in sync with the 2016 Democratic platform, which calls for the end of Hyde. Democrats believe the defense of abortion will help win back the White House.
Democratic voters have made clear that they prioritize finding a nominee who can defeat Trump. You're going to see, I think, more and more of these candidates explicitly going after that.
Pro-life groups like the Susan B. Anthony list worry there is less room for pro-life Americans in the Democratic Party. They announce SBA List is reaching out to persuadable Democrats, independents, and moderate Republicans to educate them about the candidates and the stakes of the coming elections. Pennsylvania's governor signs a measure to help survivors of child sexual abuse. The bill gives victims more time to file a lawsuit. It also ends time limits for authorities to pursue criminal charges. Last year, a landmark grand jury report found 300 Catholic priests had abused children in the state over 7 decades. The Catholic priest in Chicago whose civil rights and social justice activism led to a television movie about his life died yesterday. Father George Clements marched with Martin Luther King Jr. in several states. Father Clements also adopted 4 children. Last year, he was accused of sexually abusing a minor. He denied the claims. Father Clements was 87 years old. At least 21 people are dead following an earthquake in Albania. The 6.4 magnitude quake was felt across the southern Balkans and knocked down apartment buildings and hotels. It was followed by multiple aftershocks. Rescuers are combing through rubble looking for survivors. At least 600 people were injured. A week-long police siege of a university in Hong Kong may be winding down. It comes as the former British territory's chief executive says residents want life to return to normal.
After these 5 or 6 months, Hong Kong people have realized very clearly that Hong Kong could no longer tolerate this chaotic situation. Everybody wants to go back to their normal life, and this requires the concerted efforts of every one of us.
Carrie Lam also says resorting to violence is not the way to move forward. Meanwhile, there appears to be only one last protester at Hong Kong's Polytechnic University. Officials say the rest have left the campus. Demonstrators used the school as a base for clashes with police. Pope Francis spent his final day in Japan visiting a community of Jesuit priests. He also spoke about the importance of Catholic schools.
Esta universidad debería ser un centro no solo de formación intelectual.
The Holy Father says the Jesuit-run Sophia University should be a place where a better society and a hope-filled future can take shape. The students say they felt closer to the Holy Father because they consider him open-minded and friendly. Later, the Holy Father left for the Tokyo airport. And several Catholic bishops greeted the Holy Father in a short farewell ceremony at the airport. Pope Francis then boarded the papal plane to return to Rome and end his week-long trip to Japan and Thailand. It was his 32nd apostolic trip as Pope. On his way back to the Vatican, the Holy Father defended a raid on the Vatican's financial watchdog agency, saying it showed the in-house system of checks and balances is working. Pope Francis says he authorized the October 1st raid after the Vatican criminal prosecutor came to him with evidence of corruption involving a Holy See investment in a London real estate venture. Hannah Brockhouse, senior Rome correspondent for Catholic News Agency, joins us now. Hannah, on the return flight, journalists asked the Holy Father about the Vatican's finances. He said there is corruption, but did the Pope say any more about how he's dealing with the problem?
Yes, Wyatt, he talked about Vatican finances on the papal plane, including investments, financial management, things of this sort. He said that it can be good management to invest money well rather than to leave it in a drawer. He also said that he's happy that the Vatican's mechanisms for finding corruption are working and that they have found some suspicions of corruption, but they are working to investigate that. He also said, though, that a controversial London apartment investment, it is not yet clear if that is also corrupted. Another thing he said was that the 5 people who were suspended as Vatican employees in October will soon be undergoing questioning as part of that continuing investigation of corruption.
Okay, and we're continuing to follow that investigation very closely. You were on board the papal flight. What did Pope Francis say about the topic of nuclear weapons? It was an important issue he talked about during his trip.
That's right. On the flight, he reiterated that both the possession and the use of nuclear arms are immoral. He also said he would like to see nuclear power plants be closed down if they can't be guaranteed to be safe, because he's worried about the destruction they can cause humanity. He said that was very clear for him when he was in Hiroshima, the cruelty that humans can do to one another.
Well, you've been traveling with the Pope for a week now. This is the second time you've been aboard a papal flight, your first being Ireland. What stands out for you, Hannah, as sort of the highlight of this trip?
I think, Wyatt, there were two main highlights for me. Both of them were the big masses, the one that happened in Thailand and another that happened in Tokyo in Japan. In the one in Thailand, I was really struck when everyone was praying the rosary together before Mass. You could just see people of all ages joining together in that prayer, and they prayed it in several different languages. That was really moving. Another moment in the Tokyo Dome was whenever there were quiet moments during Mass, you could hear babies and children's cries and little screams from all around the dome. And, you know, it was filled with 50,000 people, and I think many of them were children. And I saw as well many people with disabilities. And you could just tell that there was a real love for our Pope there, and everyone was really excited to see him.
It does sound like an incredible experience, and we appreciate your reports throughout this trip. Hannah Brockhouse, Senior Rome Correspondent for Catholic News Agency. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Wyatt.
Coming up, how an international aid organization is helping fight the food shortage in Haiti. And a report from the Second International Conference on Christian Persecution in Hungary. Humanitarian organizations in Haiti are sounding the alarm over an escalating food crisis. Months of sustained anti-government protests, sporadic violence, and political gridlock have made it difficult to deliver aid. Current estimates put the number of Haitians in need of emergency food assistance at more than 3.6 million. By next spring, that figure could rise to more than 4 million Haitians. That would be 40% of the country's population. Joining me now by Skype from New York City is Ravi Triptrap, Executive Director of Malteser International Americas, the humanitarian arm of the Order of Malta. Ravi, welcome into the program. Your organization has been on the ground in Haiti since the country was hit by a devastating earthquake in 2010. How widespread is this food crisis nowadays?
Yes, thank you, Wade. We've seen a lot of news reports of the social unrest in Haiti, but little attention is given to the humanitarian crisis, which is based on the food crisis that is unveiling right now. And this could spiral into in the coming months into a disaster that would probably affect 40% of the population. And still people ask why Haiti, what happened since after the earthquake? But it was not only the earthquake, but it was also a lot of cholera outbreaks right after that, and response to hurricanes like Isaac and Matthew. So a lot of natural disasters have affected the already vulnerable country.
You'd mentioned all the natural disasters. What role is the current political situation playing in the humanitarian crisis?
Yes, President Buzet has not much done to calm down the population, and also the position of the Prime Minister is vacant since March this year, who is actually the head of government. The current budget of Haiti was also never confirmed, and that means that also international interagency agencies like the American Inter-American Bank and the Monetary Fund has paused their budget support to Haiti, which means less access to food, less access to all infrastructure and fuel. So the poorest of the poor will not have any access to food.
There are so many challenges in Haiti right now. How is Malteser International Americas helping to provide aid?
We focus on two regions. One is rural, where we just finalized a building of an aqueduct, which supports about 20,000 people, not only with safe drinking water, but also to utilize that water for the agricultural production there. We continued with providing of seeds and agricultural techniques and tools. And also in the slum area of Port-au-Prince and Cité Soleil, we introduced and worked with the community to cultivate family and community gardens so they can produce the food and nutrition themselves, especially when they don't have access due to the current situation and the closing of the markets.
For our viewers who are watching, how can we as Catholics help?
So first of all, now that we enter into the holidays and the season of thanks, please keep the people of Haiti in your prayers, and please visit our website, orderofmaltarelief.org, where you can receive more information about the current situation that unveils. And please support Malteser International, and wishing you all a happy Thanksgiving.
And of course, our viewers will continue to pray for all of the work that you do and all the work that a number of humanitarian organizations do to help the people of Haiti. Ravi Triptrap, Executive Director for Malteser International Americas. Thanks so much for talking with us.
Thank you.
Hungary is holding its second international conference on Christian persecution. It's taking place in Budapest, where church leaders, politicians, and others are gathered to come up with solutions on how best to help Christians in the Middle East. They want Christian communities to thrive once again in their ancient homeland. Edward Penton, Rome correspondent for EWTN's National Catholic Register, joins us from Budapest. Edward, tell us about the main topics. What is being discussed at the conference?
Well, they're really discussing the continuing plight of persecuted Christians around the world, particularly in the Middle East. We heard today that 80% of Christians have left Iraq, 50% of Christians have left Syria. And they said, we heard from a Syriac patriarch who said that despite sounding the alarm 5 years ago, they've seen few tangible results. Nothing much tangible has come from that. But it was also a very positive conference as well. So far we've had lots of commitment to help persecuted Christians, including from President Trump, who sent a statement saying he was gratified that the Hungarian government is convicted about this issue and is helping persecuted Christians as much as the US is wanting to help them. And he said they've put in concrete steps to do that.
To follow up with you on that, the conference is being organized by the Hungarian government. Why does the government there have such an interest in helping persecuted Christians and shining a light on this topic?
Well, the Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, spoke this morning, and he actually gave a very good explanation about that, in the sense that Hungary has a history of really defending the faith from Muslims in the past, but also being in a part of Europe where it's been surrounded by often hostile governments and states. And so it's defended Christianity, and he said Christianity is the element that's kept Hungary surviving for so long, over 1,000 years. And so that's really the main reason why. But also from the state point of view, they believe it helps stability, it helps reinforce Christian culture here, especially at a time when there's lots of immigration coming from other countries.
Like you say, there are extraordinary challenges when you think of the plight of persecuted Christians. Let's talk about long-term goals here. What are the participants of this conference trying to achieve, and could we expect any resolution?
Yes, well, I think the main element that they're trying to achieve is greater cooperation between the people here to unify those who are working for the benefit of persecuted Christians, and really that people can network. And there's a wide number of people here from a whole variety of different organizations here to help persecuted Christians. So that's the main element, but also to offer solidarity to persecuted Christians. When they see a conference like this, they feel they're not so alone. Often they complain that they feel alone and not really thought about or cared about by the rest of the world. So this helps to remedy that. And at the end, I think we'll see a declaration given by the participants, a declaration of commitment to helping persecuted Christians going forward.
Like you say, it's such an important conference, drawing people from all over the world to talk about this issue. Edward Penton from EWTN's National Catholic Register, reporting from Budapest. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Wyatt.
Up next, analysis of whether an internet giant is collecting healthcare records without a doctor's consent. And as Thanksgiving approaches, President Trump is talking turkey. We'll explain. A collaboration between tech giant Google and Catholic healthcare system ytsync-en is raising concerns. They're under scrutiny by the Office for Civil Rights in the Department of Health and Human Services to make sure their agreement meets federal privacy law. First reported by the Wall Street Journal, the project, known as Nightingale, seeks to collect the detailed health information of millions of people across 21 states. Google and ytsync-en say the initiative is compliant with the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or HIPAA, and includes protections for patient data. Rachel Bovard has been following the story. She's the Senior Director of Policy at the Conservative Partnership Institute and a Senior Advisor at the Internet Accountability Project. Rachel, welcome back to the studio.
Thanks for having me.
Explain to us how this data collection would work.
So under the terms of the deal, Ascension Health Centers, which is a chain of hospitals, contracted with Google, and they transferred all of this patient data, which includes medical records, names, dates of birth, to Google. And under HIPAA, because Google is a business associate, they are allowed to do this. But the trick here is that none of the patients or the doctors were aware or gave consent that this transfer was taking place.
It is pretty alarming when you think about this. Google has been criticized in the past for not doing enough to safeguard users' privacy. What ethical issues does this raise for you, and does this trouble you from this?
It does, because as you mentioned, Google is not a trusted actor with data. They've proven themselves to be untrustworthy in the past. And in this particular issue, the way HIPAA was written, and again, this law was written in 1996, well before any of this kind of data transfer was taking place, the patient doesn't know. And if there's a violation of the patient's data, if Google misuses it, there's no way for them to have a follow-up. There's no way to say, throw a flag on the play and say my rights are being violated. So that's a huge area of concern. And also, Google won't say what they're doing with this data. They simply say, we take privacy very seriously, but they're not saying what they do with the data. That's a problem.
So what's the incentive for a hospital, healthcare organization to partner with Google?
Well, a lot of hospital chains and doctors' offices want to work with Google to create efficiencies within the healthcare space, to work on electronic medical records, and those are good goals. But we have a huge privacy issue here. Patients should consent to this. Patients should know what's going on with their full medical records and what Google is going to do with the data and how they're going to protect it. Google is doing or saying none of that right now.
Well, do you think there's anything the patients and doctors can do to stop collection of sensitive data?
Well, I think raising concern about this issue is key because, again, Ascension didn't tell their patients or their doctors that they were under this contract with Google. They didn't tell them that they were transferring the data. Patients have a right to speak up now with doctors' offices, with hospitals, and with Google to say, look, whatever you're going to do with my data, I would like to know. This is a consumer knowledge area, and people need to start speaking up.
It is so important that we be aware of this issue. People in favor of this kind of data collection say it has the potential for tremendous good and the benefits far outweigh the risks. What's your response to that?
Well, that's the whole thing with big tech, right? It does make our lives more efficient, it makes it more convenient, but we have to know what's going on. And to a great extent, these companies don't tell us what they collect. Or in the case of Google, we think we've turned off our location data, for instance, and then we come to find out they're still tracking us. So there needs to be a lot more transparency from big tech and a lot more accountability from them as well. And we don't see that either at the federal or state level right now in terms of our laws and regulations, and it might be time to put those in place.
It's so important that we shine the light on this issue, like I say, not just for healthcare, but for all aspects of our lives, our phones, etc. Rachel Bovard, Senior Advisor at the Internet Accountability Project and Senior Director of Policy at the Conservative Partnership Institute. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Members of a Catholic church in Detroit have an especially good reason to give thanks just days before Thanksgiving. St. Josephat Church now has a replacement organ after its original was destroyed due to a week's worth of rain spilling through the roof. The new digital organ has been installed in the 118-year-old church. The parish organist says the high-tech digital instrument creates a traditional sound. It also is significantly less expensive than the pipe organ destroyed by the rain. The best news? The new organ is smaller, and it will not cover up the century-old stained glass window that was only discovered after the original organ was being removed in April. Finally tonight, President Donald Trump issues a presidential pardon to a Thanksgiving turkey. He also says he's thinking of the military as we approach the holiday.
I want to thank Almighty God for the shedding His grace on our nation. Our nation is special, and we especially send our love to members of the United States Armed Forces serving all over the world.
The president spared the life of Butter, a 47-pound turkey. He also gave clemency to another turkey named Bread. The two will spend their lives on a farm at Virginia Tech. The pardon of a turkey before Thanksgiving is a tradition that began in 1989. The president also made a joke about impeachment, saying the turkeys received subpoenas, quote, to appear in Adam Schiff's basement on Thursday. And we wish our EWTN viewers Godspeed if you'll be traveling here in the next several days for the holiday. We pray God will bless you and your families. And with that, we wrap up tonight's newscast. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Wyatt Goolsby. We're back tomorrow with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night, and God bless.